welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're going to be taking a deep dive into the Xbox Underground.
Okay.
You know, those teens that were stealing unreleased games. They even built their own Xbox One.
Yeah.
Before it was even out. I mean, talk about a wild ride through, like, the underbelly of the gaming industry, right?
It's a crazy story.
Yeah, and we've got some great sources to pull from today. We've got excerpts from a pasted text article and that YouTube video, The Kids Who Hacked Xbox, by the channel Fern. Have you seen that one?
Yeah, it's a good one. It's crazy to think this all started back in the early 2010s. You know, back when cybersecurity wasn't nearly as sophisticated as it is today.
Oh, totally. So, like, what? These were just a bunch of kids who barely knew what they were doing.
Well, not exactly. They were definitely skilled with computers, but they weren't hardened criminals or anything. Mostly teenagers, really, just driven by curiosity and...
Teenagers. I could barely figure out how to use my flip phone back then.
Right. But these kids, they were hacking into, like, major corporations. It's pretty wild.
Okay, so where do we even begin with this? Who are the main players in this whole Xbox Underground thing?
Well, the ringleaders, the guys who really made this whole thing go viral, were David, Dylan, Sonad, Justin, Austin, and Nathan.
Wait, those are their real names?
Well, those are their real first names. Online, they went by these aliases like Xenon, Superday, Sonic, MTW, MAA, Monkey, and Anime Freak.
Whoa, those names sound like straight out of a video game.
Exactly. They were living a double life, you know? Teenagers by day, master hackers by night.
I mean, that's kind of cool, and it, you know, don't try this at home kind of way. But what got them into hacking in the first place? Was it just about getting their hands on those unreleased games?
I mean, imagine being able to play Gears of War 3 months before anyone else.
Oh, man. The bragging rights alone would be insane.
Right, but it went beyond just games. Don't forget, these guys were able to hack into Microsoft, Intel, Disney, even the U.S. military.
Wait, Disney? What were they going to steal? Mickey Mouse's vacation plan?
No, they were after something far more valuable. Data. Blueprints, financial records, source code, you name it, they were after it. I mean, they even stumbled upon a U.S. military flight simulator at one point.
A military flight simulator? Seriously. Were they trying to join the Air Force virtually?
Who knows? But it just goes to show how far their reach extended. We're talking about almost 25 major corporations and terabytes of data stolen.
Terabytes? That's like a ridiculous amount of data.
It is. I mean, 1 terabyte alone can hold something like 200,000 songs. Now imagine having access to thousands of times that amount of sensitive information.
Okay, so we've established these kids were not messing around, but let's back up for a sec. How did they even pull off that first big hack, the one with Gears of War 3?
Ah, yes. Gears of War 3. That was their first taste of real trouble and fame, you could say. It all started with some leaked login credentials.
Okay, so, like, someone's password got left on a sticky note somewhere.
Not quite. Imagine someone at Epic Games, maybe an employee, accidentally sharing their login information online, or maybe having weak security on a personal device.
And Dylan just happened to stumble across it.
Exactly. Dylan, aka Superday, was always on the lookout for this kind of stuff. And when he found it, well, it was like finding a key to a treasure chest.
And that treasure chest was full of unreleased Gears of War 3 goodness.
Yeah, but finding the key is one thing. They still had to bypass security measures, you know, like firewalls and stuff like that, and figure out how Epic's network was structured.
And then actually find where the game files were hidden.
Exactly. It took some serious tech savvy.
And a little bit of luck, probably.
Maybe, but they got it. They got their hands on the game months before it was released.
So they were basically digital detectives.
I like that. Yeah, digital detectives. And they were good.
But getting away with it, that's a different story, right?
Exactly. Epic Games was not happy. Like, at all.
I bet they weren't.
Yeah.
We're talking about a major corporation here.
Oh, yeah. They called in the FBI, the media got wind of it, and suddenly these teenagers were in way over their heads.
So the heat was on? Did they back down, try to lay low?
Well, some of them did, but Dylan's a different story.
Oh, what did he do?
He called Epic Games.
What?
He called them up and basically confessed, even asked them for a poster of the game as a reward.
You're kidding?
I'm serious. The guy was unbelievable. Like, he almost wanted to get caught.
What a character.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got teenagers hacking into video game companies. The FBI's on their tail. One of them is calling up the company he just hacked to confess and ask for a poster. What could possibly happen next?
Well, you're not going to believe this. Remember how I mentioned they found the plans for Microsoft's next console, the Xbox One? Well, Dylan, he tried to sell it on eBay.
No way.
Yeah.
He tried to sell the actual console. That's even crazier than calling up Epic Games.
I know, right? It was a bold move. I mean, he claimed that he got it by accident, like some kind of mix-up with a shipment, but come on, who's going to believe that?
Not Microsoft, that's for sure. Did he actually get any bids?
You know, I don't think so. The FBI, they shut the auction down pretty quickly. This wasn't just a kid stealing a video game anymore. It was a whole other level.
Yeah, things were escalating fast.
They were. The FBI investigation, it really kicked into high gear after that. We're talking raids, arrests, the whole 9 yards.
And the guys, how did they handle the pressure? I can't even imagine.
It's interesting, actually, how differently they each responded to it all. David, for instance, he decided to cooperate with the FBI.
Really, the same guy who helped orchestrate all of this.
Yep.
And get this. He ended up impressing the agents so much with his technical knowledge, they actually offered him a job later on.
You kidding? From hacking suspect to working with the FBI.
Yep. He served his 18 months, but then he landed a cushy cybersecurity job. Talk about turning your life around, right?
That's amazing. What about the others?
Well, Austin, he's the one who went by A-Monkey online. He also managed to dodge jail time by helping the FBI with another case.
So he flipped too. Wow, these guys were basically junior FBI consultants by the end of it all.
Pretty much. He got probation and ended up becoming head of cybersecurity for a social media company, if you can believe that.
It's kind of ironic, isn't it? They got in trouble for hacking, but those same skills ended up landing them jobs in cybersecurity.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what could have been if they'd used their talents for good from the start. Right, like what if they'd been mentored instead of, raided by the FBI?
Exactly. Unfortunately, though, not everyone's story had such a happy ending.
Yeah, we should talk about Sonad and Nathan. Their stories took a much darker turn.
They did. Sonad, even though he served his time, he really struggled to, reintegrate back into society afterwards. He was constantly being watched. His computer usage was restricted, and he just couldn't escape the stigma of what he'd done.
That's rough. What about Nathan?
Well, Nathan, the one who actually built that Xbox One prototype, he was terrified of going to jail. He tried to flee to Canada, but got caught at the border.
I can't imagine the pressure he must have been under.
It was too much. And this is where we need to talk about Nathan's transition. While incarcerated, he came out as transgender, started going by Holly.
Right. It's so important to acknowledge that part of his story.
It is. And sadly, her story doesn't end there. After enduring so much, she took her own life just a year after being released. It's heartbreaking.
It is. It's a reminder that behind all the technical stuff, these were real people with real lives that were deeply affected by this whole experience.
You're right. And speaking of real lives, we can't forget Dylan. Remember him, our master of escape?
How could I forget? The guy called Epic Games to confess, then tried to sell an Xbox One prototype on eBay. What happened to him? Did he ever face any real consequences?
Well, he initially pled not guilty and faced a bunch of court cases in Australia, but instead of sticking around, he took off to the Czech Republic.
He went on the run.
Pretty much. He used his dual citizenship to his advantage. Eventually, he resurfaced in the UK, started his own cybersecurity firm, even gave talks about his hacking days.
So from hacking Microsoft to running his own cybersecurity company, talk about a career change.
I know, right? He claimed that he'd learned from his mistakes, but then, get this, in 2020, he vanished again. No one's heard from him since.
Seriously, the guy's like a ghost.
He is. Just disappears into thin air. But before we move on to our last member of this crew, did you want to talk about that eBay thing a bit more?
I think we've covered the Dylan and eBay saga pretty well for now. Unless you have more you wanted to add.
Well, no, I think we can move on. But I will say that whole thing just goes to show how unpredictable he was and how this whole Xbox Underground saga, it blurred the lines between right and wrong. It's not a simple story.
No, it's not at all. It's about the allure of the unknown, the thrill of getting away with something, and the very human consequences that come with it.
Exactly. And speaking of blurred lines, we still haven't talked about Justin, aka MTW.
Oh yeah, the potential FBI informant. Do we know for sure if he was actually working with them?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? There's a lot of evidence pointing to him being an informant. He was arrested early on, got a lighter sentence than some of the others, but it's never been officially confirmed. He's always maintained his innocence.
So he's either really good at covering his tracks, or he was just caught in the crossfire.
Right, but here's the thing. Remember how Dylan disappeared in 2020? Well, Justin, he pops up again in 2017. Gets busted for financial crimes this time. Fraud, money laundering, the works.
So he was living the high life after all. I thought he was laying low.
Apparently not. He got almost 8 years for that, a hefty fine, the whole shebang. But Even with his arrest and conviction, his role in the Xbox Underground, it's still a bit of a mystery.
It's like he's a walking, talking question mark. You never know which side he's really on.
He is, and I think that's part of what makes this whole story so fascinating. It's a reminder that things are not always black and white, especially in the digital world.
Definitely. Okay, so we've got these teenagers, they're hacking into major corporations, stealing video games, building their own consoles. Some of them get caught, some cooperate, some disappear completely. It's a lot to unpack.
It really is, and I think if there's one thing I want our listeners to take away from this, it's that behind all the tech talk and the headlines, these were real people.
Yeah, they were just kids, really, who made some bad decisions, but they had hopes and dreams, just like anyone else.
Exactly. And their stories, they highlight the very real human cost of cybercrime. It's not a victimless crime. It has real-world consequences.
Absolutely. Okay, I think it's time to move on to part 3 of our deep dive into the Xbox Underground. Are you ready for more?
You bet. Let's do it.
It's mind-blowing, really. You've got these kids, barely old enough to drive, infiltrating the highest levels of the tech world. Were they just in it for the kicks, or was there something more, something darker driving them?
It's tough to say for sure. I mean, they caused real damage, stole sensitive information. But at the same time, there's this element of, naivete to it all. Like, they didn't fully grasp the seriousness of what they were doing.
Right, like they were playing a video game in real life, and they forgot that there are no reset buttons in the real world.
Exactly, and that's what makes their story so fascinating and so cautionary. It's a reminder that the digital world, for all its anonymity, is still the real world.
With real consequences.
Absolutely. And it raises all sorts of questions about responsibility, ethics, where do we draw the line between youthful curiosity and actual cybercrime?
It's like, were they victims of their own curiosity? Or were they willing participants in something they knew was wrong?
It's a gray area, that's for sure, and there's no easy answer. But I do think that education is key here.
Right, like instead of just punishing kids for being curious about technology, we should be teaching them how to use it responsibly.
Exactly. Teach them about cybersecurity, about ethics, about the potential consequences of their actions online. I mean, who knows? Maybe some of these kids who get in trouble for hacking, maybe they could be the next generation of cybersecurity experts.
Right, instead of taking down systems, they could be building them up, making them more secure.
Precisely. There's so much potential there. It's all about channeling that curiosity, that passion, in the right direction.
Well said. Well, I think that about wraps up our deep dive into the Xbox Underground. It's been a wild ride, from stolen video games to FBI raids to even more questions than answers, really.
It has been quite a journey, but I think it's important that we keep asking these questions, keep exploring these gray areas, because the digital world is only getting more complex.
Absolutely. And as we've seen with the Xbox Underground, what starts online can have very real and sometimes very tragic consequences offline.
For sure. Well, on that note, I think it's time to sign off. Big thanks to everyone for joining us on this deep dive into the world of the Xbox Underground.
Be sure to check out the Paste to Text article and that Fern video on YouTube if you want to learn more. And until next time, keep exploring. But remember, sometimes the most valuable knowledge is found by staying on the right side of the digital divide.